You won't believe what happened when Jenny finally made the decision no one saw coming. After years of fighting, sacrificing, and holding on to hope, she walked out of India for good. And Sumit? He broke down completely, the kind of breakdown you can't script. What happens when love isn't enough? For over a decade, Jenny built her life around this relationship. She crossed continents, navigated family rejection, cultural barriers, and a huge age gap, all while trying to make things work with someone who, in his own way, kept letting her down. Every promise broken, every small compromise piled on like a weight she couldn't shake. And in the end, it all led to one irreversible choice. But here's the twist, this wasn't about drama or a sudden fight. It was about quiet, relentless pressure that finally hit its limit. Financial stress, constant emotional strain, and family tensions all came to a head in the one moment that changed everything. If you think this story is just about heartbreak, think again. There's more to what unfolded behind the cameras, and it's shocking Jenny and Sumit's story didn't start in India, it started on Facebook. Imagine meeting someone online, falling in love, only to discover years later that they weren't exactly who you thought they were. Sumit had a secret wife for a while, and that revelation alone could have ended things before they even began. But Jenny stayed, she believed in him, in the love they shared, and she fought for it, even when the odds were stacked against her. From the start, their relationship was complicated. There was a 30-year age gap, a huge cultural divide, and family dynamics that could make anyone question if love alone was enough. When Jenny finally moved to India, she left her home, her support system, and everything familiar behind. She traded comfort for sacrifice, hope for uncertainty, and a life she knew for a life she wasn't sure she could survive in. Past episodes showed Jenny trying to adapt, trying to find her place in Sumit's world. She endured endless criticism from his family, cultural misunderstandings, and moments of isolation that only grew heavier with time. Every day, she had to balance loyalty to Sumit with loyalty to herself, and it wasn't always clear which one would win. She cooked, she cleaned, she tried to be the daughter-in-law they expected, all while trying to preserve her own identity. You could see the tension in her eyes when she laughed at family jokes she didn't understand, or when she stopped herself from saying what she really felt. Sumit, for his part, had his own struggles. He was torn between family expectations, societal pressure, and his love for Jenny. Sometimes he seemed to understand the weight she carried, but often he misstepped, unintentionally adding to her stress. Financial strain and the logistical realities of life in India made things worse, and what started as romance slowly morphed into a daily test of endurance. Fans remember the moments when Jenny looked on the verge of giving up but didn't. There were tears, arguments, small victories, and crushing setbacks. She celebrated the holidays, tried to bridge cultural gaps, and even attempted to mend fences with family members who never fully accepted her. All these moments were documented on camera, but behind the scenes, the emotional cost was immense. Each step forward was paired with invisible weight, missing her friends back home, worrying about money, and constantly questioning if the life she left behind was worth what she had now. And yet, despite all of this, Jenny kept going. She adapted, she compromised, and she tried to make it work. But loyalty has its limits. How much can someone give before it stops being love and starts being self-erasure? That question hung over every scene, every quiet moment on camera, every hesitant smile she forced in family gatherings. The line between survival and surrender was growing thinner by the day, and the tension was building in ways fans could almost feel through the screen. But just when you think she's adjusting, something changes. The signs were small at first, Jenny growing quieter, more withdrawn, taking little steps that seemed inconsequential. She would pause before speaking, linger a little longer on her own thoughts, and sometimes just stand in a room without saying a word. On camera, it looked subtle, maybe even normal, but behind the scenes, it was the beginning of a decision that would shake everyone. This was the stage set for the next chapter. Jenny had survived the culture shock, the family drama, and the financial stress, but the real test wasn't about adapting anymore. It was about deciding whether her sacrifices were enough to keep a life that kept asking for more. Jenny's struggle in India wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was relentless. Day after day, she faced subtle pressures that added up to an unbearable weight. The family's skepticism, the constant cultural adjustments, and the isolation from friends and familiar routines slowly chipped away at her energy. You could see it in the way she moved through the house, quiet, careful, as if every interaction required a calculation. And financially, things weren't easy either. Life in India brought expenses and responsibilities she hadn't fully anticipated. making every decision feel heavier than it should. The loneliness hit hardest in the small, everyday moments. When Sumit was caught up with family matters or work, she would sit alone, scrolling through messages from friends she hadn't seen in years, feeling the distance in a way that no video call could erase. You know the feeling when someone quietly checks out? Yep, that's what's happening here. It wasn't a dramatic argument or a blow-up fight. It was small, almost invisible signs of someone deciding internally that the life she was living wasn't sustainable. Gradually, Jenny started making subtle but decisive moves. She organized her documents, checked her travel options, and quietly began taking steps that signaled she was thinking about a future without India, without the family pressures, without the constant compromise. On camera, these moments seemed ordinary, a pause here, a sigh there, but for anyone paying attention, it was the first real hint that her patience had limits. Friends and crew noticed it too. The way she no longer asked for reassurance, the way she stopped debating or negotiating, even the quietness at family meals, all of it pointed toward a turning point. Sumit, in his own way, misread these signals. He assumed she was just tired, just adjusting, just going through another low point like she had before. But Jenny wasn't just tired. She was realizing that love alone couldn't protect her from the daily strain of a life that asked for too much and gave too little in return. Her decision to prioritize herself was less about leaving Sumit behind and more about saving herself. Every silent moment, every careful step, was her reclaiming a piece of the autonomy she had slowly lost over the years. And yet, even as she started to pull away, there were moments that almost betrayed her intent. A laugh here, a shared glance there, small gestures that made Sumit hope she might stay. Mini cliffhangers kept popping up every few days. Would she speak up? Would she change her mind? Would the tension finally explode? Fans watching closely could almost feel the suspense building, sensing that the quiet moments were carrying far more weight than any argument ever could. Behind it all was a simple truth. Jenny had reached the edge of what she could give. Loyalty had been her guide for years, but now self-preservation was taking over. She had learned that enduring hardship endlessly isn't the same as being loved or safe. And as she quietly prepared for the next move in her life, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. For Sumit, for her, and for everyone watching. Sumit didn't see it coming. Or maybe he did, but he convinced himself it was just another low point, another emotional bump they could get past. And then reality hit him like a thunderclap. Jenny was serious. She had made decisions in silence, small moves that added up to one clear message. She was leaving, and this time it wasn't negotiable. Sumit's reaction was immediate and raw. Panic set in, and for the first time, the cracks in his calm facade showed through. He pleaded. He tried reasoning, promised change, offered compromises, and repeated all the things he had said over the years when situations seemed dire. You can almost see the hope slowly evaporating like chai on a hot afternoon. Every promise he had made in the past came back to haunt him because Jenny had already learned that words alone couldn't fix the damage. She had given too much and received too little, and now the weight of that imbalance was finally undeniable. What makes this moment so compelling is how human it is. Sumit's reaction wasn't villainous or dramatic in a stereotypical reality TV way. It was painfully ordinary. He was indecisive, emotionally dependent, and caught between guilt and fear of loss. Psychology tells us that when someone has relied on another for emotional stability for so long, the idea of sudden absence can trigger intense panic. And that's exactly what played out. He kept replaying moments in his head, wishing he had defended Jenny better, questioned his family earlier, or recognized her suffering sooner. The weight of missed opportunities crushed him quietly but completely. The tension in the household became almost unbearable. Every look, every pause, every meal together carried the unspoken knowledge that something had shifted irreversibly. Friends and crew who observed these days said the air felt thick with unsaid words. Sumit made repeated attempts to stop Jenny from leaving, sometimes clinging, sometimes begging, sometimes sitting in silence, staring at spaces she had once filled. Each moment was like watching someone confront a truth they had ignored for years. And yet, despite his desperation, there was a tragic comedy to it too. He would pace, make frantic calls, and then sit down, replaying old conversations, looking for a loophole that didn't exist. You couldn't help but think. This is the guy who finally realized he'd been relying on a safety net that had quietly disappeared. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also a human story about delayed reckoning, about realizing too late that love sometimes needs more than hope to survive. Many cliffhangers kept building throughout these days. Would Jenny respond? Would she soften? Would he finally do the one thing that could make her stay? Every small gesture of connection was met with silence or gentle refusal. And the cycle repeated, Sumit hoping, Jenny resolute. The unpredictability made every interaction tense, every glance heavy with meaning. Fans watching could almost feel the suspense, sensing that the emotional stakes were escalating to a point that couldn't be undone. In moments alone, Sumit's guilt was palpable. Sitting in the house, staring at empty spaces, replaying past mistakes, he was forced to confront his own avoidance. He had prioritized the comfort of routine, family appeasement, and avoidance of conflict over Jenny's well-being, and now that inaction carried consequences he couldn't reverse. Every attempt to reconcile fell short because Jenny had reached a limit, a boundary he hadn't noticed until it was too late. Through all of this, there's a lesson in plain sight. Human relationships are fragile, and ignoring emotional signals can lead to heartbreak that no amount of pleading or promises can fix. Sumit's panic, guilt, and despair weren't about losing face or pride. They were about realizing he had underestimated the cost of indecision. And as Jenny quietly prepared to leave, the stage was set for the final, irreversible moment that would change everything. The final goodbye wasn't loud. There were no arguments, no dramatic shouting, no villain to blame. It was quiet, painfully deliberate, and utterly heartbreaking. Jenny had made up her mind, and every move she made that morning, the packing, the sorting of documents, the careful closure of drawers, was a testament to that decision. If you've been following, you know this hits differently than any argument. This wasn't a negotiation or a test. This was the moment she chose herself over everything she had sacrificed for so long. Sumit didn't know how to respond. He hovered, desperate, pleading, trying to reach her with words that had lost their power over the years. He begged for delay, for reconsideration, for even a tiny sign that she might stay. And Jenny, calm but resolute, listened. She held his hands, cried quietly, whispered apologies for the pain she knew she was causing, but didn't waver. Her decision was not born from anger or revenge, it was born from survival. Staying would have meant continuing a life defined by emotional exhaustion and compromise that had slowly erased who she was. The moments in that house were almost unbearable to watch. Crew members reportedly struggled to remain detached as Jenny lingered in each room, absorbing the weight of what she was leaving behind. The empty spaces, the personal items left untouched, the small, lingering touches, every detail spoke louder than any dramatic confrontation ever could. Sumit's despair was equally raw. He alternated between silence, frantic pleas, and collapsing into the realization that the life he had relied on would no longer exist. And the contrast was stark. Publicly, viewers might have assumed that their love story could survive anything. On camera, it looked like devotion and sacrifice. But privately, the reality was far messier, far more human. Jenny's departure revealed the cost of endless compromise, of enduring hardship in the name of love. It showed that loyalty has limits, and that courage sometimes comes in the form of walking away, not fighting. Many cliffhangers kept the tension alive even in silence. A hand lingered a moment too long on a suitcase, a glance at the doorway carried unspoken regret, and every pause felt like it could tip either way. Fans watching could sense that the true heartbreak wasn't in a heated argument, it was in the quiet acceptance of an ending that neither of them wanted but both had to face. By the time Jenny left, the atmosphere was heavy with grief, understanding, and finality. Sumit sat in the empty house afterward, staring at the spaces she had filled, the weight of years of indecision pressing down. Jenny, meanwhile, stepped toward a future that promised safety, support, and the chance to rebuild herself. This was the kind of moment that lingers, the kind that makes viewers realize that sometimes the bravest choice isn't staying, but leaving. After Jenny left India, the story didn't just end, it shifted. Back in the United States, she faced a different kind of challenge: reintegration. It wasn't just about returning to familiar streets and friends. It was about reclaiming the life she had put on hold for more than a decade. Slowly, she began reconnecting with the people she had left behind, leaning on the friendships she had sacrificed for love, and rebuilding a support system that reminded her what stability felt like. Relief was part of the mix, yes, but so was guilt. Leaving Sumit behind, knowing how devastated he felt, weighed heavily on her. She had chosen herself, but she hadn't chosen to hurt anyone. The transition was emotional, raw, and deeply human. Jenny shared that for the first time in years, she could breathe without fear of rejection, financial instability, or being trapped in a life that demanded constant compromise. The physical distance from India brought a mental clarity she hadn't felt in years. For viewers, it was a reminder that empowerment often comes in quiet moments of reclaiming agency, not in dramatic showdowns. She wasn't running from love. She was stepping into a life where love didn't require self-erasure. Meanwhile, in India, Sumit was left to navigate the empty house, the hollow spaces, and the absence of the person who had been at the center of his world. His initial hope that Jenny might change her mind quickly faded. He found himself replaying past mistakes over and over, questioning his indecision and the compromises he had allowed, the moments where he prioritized family, comfort, or avoidance over protecting Jenny's emotional safety. Emotional unraveling became the new reality. Friends and production insiders reported him sitting in silence for long stretches, staring at photographs, or revisiting places she had once occupied with a heavy, quiet regret. Social media exploded. Fans debated endlessly. Did Jenny leave too soon? Was Sumit a victim of circumstance or his own indecision? Some praised Jenny for finally choosing herself after years of sacrifice, while others criticized her for walking away instead of enduring cultural and familial barriers. Verified posts from Sumit and Jenny on Instagram confirmed parts of their struggles and realities, but the conversation online reflected the larger tension. How much endurance is too much, and when does love stop being enough? Many cliffhangers emerged naturally in this chaos. Every post, every story, every subtle update hinted at possible future developments. Could there be reconciliation? Would Sumit ever recover emotionally? Fans speculated endlessly, keeping the narrative alive long after the cameras stopped rolling. Psychologically, this period showed a clear contrast between the two journeys. Jenny's choice reflected survival and self-preservation. She prioritized emotional health, dignity, and autonomy, demonstrating a form of courage that is often overlooked in love stories. For Sumit, the experience underscored the cost of indecision and emotional dependency. By failing to act when it mattered most, he faced a permanent loss that could not be fixed with promises or hindsight. Watching him process grief and regret reminded viewers how powerful self-awareness can be, and how painful it can be when it arrives too late. Fans who had followed the story for years recognized the depth of these moments. The absence of theatrics made the reality hit even harder. No villain, no manufactured drama, just two people dealing with the consequences of long-term choices. Jenny's departure became a case study in empowerment through boundaries, in understanding that loyalty does not require sacrificing one's identity. Meanwhile, Sumit's struggle reflected the universal human fear of loss and the intense emotions that come with realizing what's gone forever. The story left room for ongoing tension and speculation. Social media reactions suggested that the relationship wasn't completely closed. Some fans pointed to subtle interactions, story posts, and comments as hints of lingering connections. Others focused on Sumit's attempts to rebuild or reorient his life without Jenny, wondering if future developments might bring unexpected surprises. The unanswered questions kept the audience engaged, wondering if this chapter was truly over or just evolving. Ultimately, the aftermath highlighted a powerful truth: survival and self-respect can coexist with heartbreak. Empowerment isn't about winning or defeating someone else. It's about making choices that preserve your identity, your mental health, and your future. Jenny's story reminded viewers that leaving doesn't always mean failure. It can mean finally valuing yourself enough to walk away from what no longer serves you. And for Sumit, it was a lesson in recognition, responsibility, and the irreversible cost of indecision. Looking back at Jenny and Sumit's journey, one thing is clear: love alone doesn't always conquer everything. For years, viewers watched Jenny navigate cultural barriers, family tension, a massive age gap, and financial uncertainty, all while trying to maintain a relationship that demanded constant compromise. It raises a question for everyone watching: how much is too much before loyalty turns into self-erasure? Would you stay in Jenny's place, sacrificing your support system and personal stability for the sake of love? Cross-cultural relationships are complicated, and reality TV often magnifies that complexity. In Jenny and Sumit's case, the pressures weren't just personal, they were structural. Family expectations, societal norms, and cultural misunderstandings layered on top of the usual emotional ups and downs. Every sacrifice Jenny made came with invisible strings attached, and every misstep by Sumit, intentional or not, added weight to her decision-making. Watching this unfold, it's hard not to notice a pattern. In many reality TV relationships, the more someone gives without boundaries, the faster they risk losing themselves. Sacrifice is celebrated on screen, but the aftermath shows its limits. Jenny's story proves that enduring hardship endlessly isn't a badge of honor if it erodes your identity. You can give love your all, but if it's one-sided or unsupported, the emotional cost eventually becomes unsustainable. This is a lesson many fans can relate to beyond the TV screen. Recognizing your emotional limits isn't weakness, it's awareness. And acting on those limits, even when it's painful, is an act of strength. At the same time, Sumit's struggle reminds us what happens when indecision dominates a relationship. Emotional dependency, avoidance, and hesitation can quietly erode trust and connection. He loved Jenny, yes, but his inaction allowed her frustration and exhaustion to grow until the only option left for her was departure. There's a lesson in that too. Love isn't just about being present, it's about recognizing what your partner needs and acting before the damage becomes permanent. You can almost see it in hindsight. Every small delay, every unspoken assumption, became a thread in the rope that eventually snapped. Fans of reality TV might notice recurring patterns here. Couples endure early drama, navigate cultural or familial obstacles, and often rely on hope to keep the relationship afloat. But Jenny's exit shows that hope has a shelf life, and audiences respond more to authenticity than manufactured conflict. Real heartbreak, vulnerability, and difficult choices are what stick with viewers, long after the cameras stop rolling. Social media debates over Jenny's decision highlight how invested fans are in these stories, and how relatable the emotional stakes feel. So, what can viewers take away from the story? First, know your limits. Recognize when love is no longer enough to sustain a healthy life. Second, understand that self-preservation is not selfish, it's necessary. Choosing yourself doesn't erase your past sacrifices, it honors them. And finally, look closely at patterns in relationships, both on and off screen. Are compromises balanced, or is one person silently carrying the weight? Are issues addressed or deferred indefinitely? These questions aren't just for reality TV, they're questions anyone in a long-term relationship should ask themselves. And while Jenny's departure feels definitive, it doesn't close the book completely. Social media continues to buzz with speculation, hints of possible interactions, and debates over what might happen next. Could reconciliation ever be on the table? Will Sumit find his own way forward, or are some lessons only learned through permanent loss? These unresolved threads keep the story alive and give fans something to discuss, share, and engage with, setting the stage perfectly for the next video. Jenny's departure wasn't just a breakup. It was a lesson in the cost of love, the courage it takes to put yourself first, and the real consequences of long-term emotional strain. Years of sacrifice, hope, and compromise came to an end not with fireworks or shouting, but with quiet, undeniable finality. Jenny chose survival over comfort, dignity over endless compromise, and in doing so, she reminded us all that sometimes the bravest act isn't staying and fighting, it's walking away before you lose yourself completely. Sumit was left to face the aftermath, grappling with regret, guilt, and the painful realization that some losses can't be undone. And while this chapter has closed, the story isn't over. Next time, we look at how fans are reacting to Jenny's decision, the debates heating up on social media, and one 90-day fiancé star who might just shock everyone again. The heartbreak lingers, the lessons resonate, and the drama continues just the way we love it.